You're listening to the Missionary Perspective Podcast with veteran missionaries Erik Johnson and Joshua Mead. We're glad you could join us. We trust this podcast will be both a blessing and a challenge as we relate topics in world evangelism from a missionary perspective. Now, here's Josh and Erik.
Welcome back to the Missionary Perspective Podcast. We're here with part 2 of the making of a missionary, the journey of Rusty Gibson and my good friend Rusty Gibson. If you haven't listened to part 1, go back, hit pause here, go back and download the first episode. Rusty went over a lot of his life and how he got to this point where he is now as a young man who's trying to, if the Lord allows him, to be a missionary in Australia. We finished the last podcast talking about his time on his survey trip. And so, Rusty, you come back from your survey trip. You've had time to reflect on that. Now, let's talk about what's next in your life. What does the next 12 months look like on the horizon for you? What are some steps you're taking to go towards the mission field? And how can we maybe pray about some specific things here in the future?
Sure. Great question. So as I think about the next 12 months, it's hard to grasp what it's going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually going to lead me to one of my questions for you near the end of this podcast. But what I have been doing is I truly believe in making steps towards a goal, steps of faith, and then you see oftentimes God will bless as a result of just our action, our obedience towards what we know we're supposed to do. We make steps towards it, and then God starts to move and work, and many times. And that's really been the case here. So I didn't make many steps after coming back from my trip from Australia. I got plugged in at my home church. I took some advice from Pastor Gonderman in Sydney and Pastor Hurst in Perth, and just really focused on getting plugged in, serving at my home church. And that's really what I did. So in regards to Australia, I really didn't take any more steps other than serving at my home church. It wasn't until actually a couple weeks ago that I finally was like, I need to start moving on some of this stuff. I talked with my pastor, and he said, you can leave for Australia whenever you'd like, however soon you want, however late you want. You're at a good season of life. You don't have any major things tying you down. Mm-hmm. I work for myself and other contractors, just doing side work and stuff. So it's like, you leave whenever you want. So then I started just making calls, researching visa options, different things like that. And that would be the prayer now. Is I have come down to 2 roads that I can get into Australia, regarding one visa going this way, one visa going this way. And without getting into too much details there, one option would be expensive up front, but a quicker road to citizenship. But I would have to postpone my leave date for about another 1.5 years at the least. Mm-hmm. The other option would be quicker, get to Australia, but in the long run, I'm going to have to renew the visa several times before I can renew citizenship, and it's going to cost more in the long haul. And it's just a few more years involved. So we're trying to weigh those options. What lies for me in Australia is an internship that I have scheduled. So Lord willing, I will spend about a year in Sydney working under Pastor Gonderman, perhaps, and then also Ministry Asia at Brother Naranjan Sundaraj. Mm-hmm. So I've been in communication with them. We'll see where that goes. Nothing super confirmed yet, but we have definitely talked about it, the possibilities. So that I could use prayer as far as what is going to be the wisest choice regarding visa and the road to get there. I'm down to 2 options. Mm-hmm. With that year internship, Lord willing, that'll give me time to discern what to do next, where to go next. I'd like to see if maybe I could spend some time in Perth for a little bit with a similar thing, just not an internship, but that's all up in the air. I'm in that planning phase of
Yeah.
what do I do? When do I do it? What's the best road? The next time I will be there is in December. In January, I'll revisit some of the churches that I went to, as well as see some additional cities that I did not get to see. So,
Well, that's very exciting a possibility, and I can tell you from my experience, I got to visit the Dominican several times, but specifically the second time I did a 3 month internship over the summer, and that really was the most important time for me because sometimes, obviously, in a week or two, there's a romanticism, there's an excitement, there's emotionalism, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like that,
yeah.
the Lord uses those things sometimes to bind our hearts to a culture and a people, but when we get more time and to understand and to know the challenges that will lay ahead, that's very important. So a year internship would be amazing, and we'll certainly be praying for you for that. And God opens the door. It sounds like you have two great opportunities. You just have to figure out which one's going to be the best one
Right.
as far as when to leave. And having your support of your pastor is so vital. That's a great thing. Hopefully, young guys are listening here. One of the things I love is that you've had this dream and this direction from the Lord, but you're also trying to take the right steps. You're not trying to rush something that just, emotionalism in your heart. That emotion and that drive and that care is still there, but your desire is balanced by using godly counselors to help you make the right steps. And so
Right.
that's great. Looking forward to hearing
Right.
how your trip in December goes. That's coming quickly. I'm sure that they'll come back with another enthusiasm. I think I went to the Dominican, with all my trips about 5 or 6 times before I
Wow.
actually came here permanently. And so as many trips, it's
Good.
not not as a long trip as to going to Australia. I was able to
Yeah, right.
get there very
Right.
much quicker, but we were praying for that trip. Now let's turn the tables a little bit. You're this young wannabe missionary. You got your sights set on Australia. You've done a lot of thinking and praying and studying
Right.
and preparing, and you're getting to talk to a veteran missionary. What are some of the questions you're asking veteran mission? What do you want to ask me and Josh as you prepare in your upcoming journeys?
Yeah, sure. I got them typed out actually. So I'd say my first question, it goes back to what I had alluded to is I don't know what the next year is going to hold. I don't know what the next couple months is going to look like. Even trying to paint that to you
Mhm.
in conversation was very difficult for me, you know. And I think like we as Christians are called to live a life by faith. Like
Mhm.
that's not easy to do. That's very difficult. But missionaries have to live a life of faith on a different level almost. It's you don't know what the next year is going to hold. You don't know when all these things are going to take place, and you want to be able to tell people that I'm
Mhm.
a planner. I want to be able to
Yeah.
like answer, and that like grips my heart. Um, so I guess my question would be, I'll just read it off to you. As missionaries, so much of life is living with unknowns, what
Mhm.
the next month, the 6 months, or even a year will look like.
Mhm.
How have you personally learned to walk by faith through all of those uncertainties? Or how has your family, your wife, learned to trust God in that as well?
That's a great question. I think what you're talking about too is also very, very common for the beginning, especially when you're a single guy and
Mhm.
maybe you've got your training down and you've
Right.
got this goal and you're trying to connect the dots in between. You're like, all
Yeah.
right, Lord, I believe you're calling me to this thing that's, 100 miles away, but I'm at mile marker 10 right now. And Lord, how am I going to get to this mile marker? And it seems like people want to say, well, why aren't you going, 65 miles an hour towards, you'll be there in no time. And say, well,
Right.
there's a few more steps in between. And so what I'd say is, the one thing you do have going for you that's a blessing from the Lord is I think you have a goal and a direction. A lot of guys, especially in this day and age, don't have any kind of bearings. And so to have it at such a young age, that's a good thing. To have godly counsel. And so the hardest thing about patience is that you have to wait. And I can
Come
tell
on.
I can tell you from experience, the biggest area of patience I had to wait was as I was waiting for my future bride for her father to give us
Yeah.
her blessing. And that was this summer I actually took my internship and I was basically finishing a Bible college. I wanted to be a missionary in the Dominican Republic. We had really we were ones that wanted to honor our parents, and we had to wait. And the Lord actually had to literally do a heart miracle by giving my wife a pacemaker. Another story, another
Uh,
non-conversation, but He did that. And but that summer, I had none of that in my mind. I was thinking, next summer I'm going to be graduating. What am I going
yeah.
to be doing? I got to plan this out. And there's no way I could have known in 6 months my wife, future wife, was going to be having a pacemaker put in, and that would be a good thing, not a bad thing. That'd be a
Mm.
good thing that would change her dad's heart. And, so there's a part of you that just has to say, God is sovereign. He's in control. The good news is He's sending me a direction. And unless
Yeah.
He, takes the hold of the wheel and changes the direction, I'm going to keep going this direction with the wisest counsel I have until the God changes the direction. And I think that's what you should keep doing. You've got,
Yeah.
a tremendous opportunity. If God allows you to go for a year, man, take that chance, and you will know at the end of that year, not only if the Lord is definitely calling you to Australia, but I have a feeling you'll know exactly where you want to go, or where He wants you to go. And so my best advice is just, man, the road of patience is a long road, but this will be a big hurdle. So that one day when you look back, I think once you start your missionary journey, and once the Lord gives you a wife and kids, and you have that direction, it seems so far
Right.
off distance, but it'll happen quicker than you think, I believe. And one day
Mhm.
when you get to that goal where He sent you, well, then it is a step by faith, and we're getting ready to do one of the biggest things we've ever done by faith. But it's so funny, like we're thinking about buying a property and starting a camp and all kinds of things that we've never dreamed of doing. But it wasn't any bigger than the first time I had to stand in a pulpit at a church and come to our town where we didn't know anybody and go pass out
Mm.
tracts. I mean, every step seems fresh and new. But once you've done it a bunch of times and the Lord has been with you along the way, it doesn't seem as big. And so I think this is just the very first big thing, and you've got some great direction, and just trust the Lord. And and another thing I would say, I noticed this, and this is just an observation. You seem to be a young man that really is enjoying life. Some people can pine away and I don't have this, I don't have that. It seems like you're really pouring yourself into the Lord, into your friends and your family. Keep doing that. Enjoy the time you have with family, because if you're on the other side of the world, you will miss
Yeah.
you will miss birthdays, funerals, and Christmases, no matter how many times you get to come home.
Yeah.
And of all the things, excuse me, that we love being missionaries, that's the hardest, being away from family. So while you're home, enjoy time with the family, and that'll be a blessing there. Good
Mm.
question. What's your next one?
Yeah. So that leads me into my next one is, as you live in this state of faith, you don't have the answers to every question that people ask you.
Hmm.
Um, you're eventually going to be starting that road to deputation.
Hmm.
Even as I look at my 1 year internship, that's that's scary to me. Like moving to the second most expensive place in the world for a
Yeah.
year, I I can't afford that, I can't afford uh $5,000, $6,000 a month, I'm not making that now, I
No.
surely won't be able to pay for that in Australia. Um, so I know that I'm gonna need to enter deputation.
Hmm.
And I also know that I'm not going to have answers to all the questions that perhaps pastors are going to want to know,
Hmm.
or church people are going to want to know. Hey, when are you doing this? When's this going to happen? When are you going to get married? Um, all these different things. What visa are you going to have? Like, do you have a leave date? All these different things. But yet, time is of the essence. I should start seeing a few churches, as soon as I can. So, what have you found? And if I could read it, from your experience, what do pastors want to see from missionaries, whether on social media or in prayer letters or during church presentations on deputation?
Hmm.
What helps close the gap between pastors and missionaries so that communication is both clear and effective? Oftentimes there's like a disconnect between missionaries and pastors, and we'll get to the point.
Well,
It's
a, cou-
this,
a
how do
couple of
you?
things. A couple of things you have going for you. One is that you just mentioned, when the Lord burdened your heart for Australia, it took you a long time to find
Right.
Australian missionaries. So my guess is most of the churches you're going to call, Rusty, don't have an Australian missionary.
Right.
And
Yeah.
churches love supporting missionaries to places, especially big places, where they don't have gospel coverage yet. And so that'll be a big, we went on deputation. It was funny. We went on deputation. There were a lot of Dominican missionaries, and it happened to be the area we were sent out of. There actually had been a number of missionaries from that same area. So they had covered that whole region. I had to go to another region for a
Oh,
while because they all had two or three missionaries. And I
yeah,
understand it. I'm a pastor now. We try to spread out the gospel presence. And so I don't think that's a bad thing.
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, going to Australia, you're going to have an advantage in the sense of there's a lot of churches that don't have missionaries in Australia. Second thing, you're going to be very young. There is nothing more exciting, I think, for pastors than to see
Mm,
young guys who have surrendered their lives, whether they're single or not, young couples or young single guys on their way, because God has a way of working that out just fine. Now, we all want to figure that out, but pastors have seen it enough times. God usually figures that part of it out. So I wouldn't worry about that. That's usually something pastors are like, man, this guy's a sharp guy. God's going to figure that part out. They're not going to worry about you being single if you go halfway single and meet a young lady or whatever the Lord's let them doing. But the youth and the enthusiasm, sharing your burden like you did already in the part one, those will get people excited. I remember I thought about that when my wife and we were a little older. We hadn't been married, but just a little time. We got married at 27, 28 years old, but we looked young because we didn't have any kids. I didn't have all this gray hair then. And I could sense very early on the thing that people were excited about for us is that we were young and we were going to go invest our whole lives on the mission field, and they wanted to get behind that because there's a lot of truth, and you've probably seen it. There's a lot of guys sometimes get called in their mid 40s. I'm a guy in 47. Man, if I started my journey now, it would be a lot different than the 16 plus years we have on the mission field.
mm,
And there are certainly gentlemen who do that, and Lord calls them for 20 years, and they have flourishing ministries, but it doesn't always work out. And so I think the things you got going for you that are the youth. And then the last thing I'm going to tell you, don't worry about the deputation. You're going to do a great job. You're going to get a lot of things. You're going to enjoy the traveling, just like you talked about. And one of the things I tell the guys here, the last thing you need to worry about is God provision. If He's called you to do it, He's going to
mm.
provide it. You know,
It's
deputation,
fearful.
it is fearful, but I tell you, you have the right personality. You like to meet
Yeah.
people. Deputation, I love deputation and furlough. I love meeting new people, telling them about the Dominican
Yeah.
Republic. And I'm sure you're going to be the same way.
I love it. Yeah.
Lord bless you with a spouse. You'll be like on a second honeymoon. That my wife and I went and saw things we had never seen before, the Grand Canyon and the Golden Gate Bridge, and
Right.
during the week we did that kind of stuff. And so the Lord's going to provide the resources. I'm sure if He's got you this far. So there are fears there, but trust from another missionary. The thing you want to get nailed down is if you can spend that year, because that year is going to be the most important thing in your life, because it's going to set the direction of you understanding that
Right.
culture, those people, those towns, and that will be the
Mm,
most valuable thing. And then that's the other thing when you come back to tell people. I mean, some people have only gone on a trip for 5 days. Sometimes the spouse has never been
mm.
to a country, and people get supported. You spend a whole year there, they're going to be like, "This guy's young, he's ready to go, and he spent a year there. Let's go, let's get behind him." So you're going to do great there.
Well, I appreciate that. That is really encouraging. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't want to paint a picture that I'm all like, yeah, like I'm not scared, I'm not
Oh,
nervous. I'm not
sure.
like, because I do not have it all put together. I'm not like I got a lot to work on. There's more that I should be driven about. There's more that I should be getting on the move. Um, and there's aspects of like, yeah, my fear that I need to work on. I need to get that figured out between me and God. Why
Well,
am I nervous?
if you go stay a
Yeah,
year, Rusty, you're gonna miss things back home, like a
right,
birthday or a holiday. And
right.
the best thing is you're gonna understand what it feels like, and
Yeah,
and that'll help you more than anything to understand what it's gonna be like to live there forever. And so, that those are amazing opportunities, and I would just embrace those and go full force towards those.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You got any more questions?
Those are
Okay.
it.
All right.
Oh yeah.
No, those are good ones. Those are good ones. And it's totally natural to have the fear. I thought, one of the reasons when I felt called to be a missionary, we would have a lot of missionaries in our church, much like yours. And as I knew, the horizon was coming very quickly to be a missionary, and whenever we would have a missionary in who I thought was really sharp and just kind of seemed like they understood well how to communicate, I would write down their name and I would make a friendship with them, and I would ask them lots of questions. And
Right.
the more questions I asked, the more I felt comfortable with the idea of deputation. Not that it wasn't scary at times and not
Yeah.
easy all the time, but I felt like having picked the brain of really guys who had done it well and God had blessed, I felt like, oh, this is the good plan. Let's try to go to these churches, let's try to go to these regions, let's try to, go to these conferences, and like you said, stats and facts. It's basically the same kind of thing. And then, you have a burden. It's not something that's, black and white. This is a, full color. The Lord's given this burden for these people, but a necessary evil is to get support so I can live there. And so I'm going
Yeah.
to attack deputation, like I attacked Bible college. I attacked my internship with,
Right.
this is what I want to do, and I'm going to do this the best I can so I can get it done with, and we're all
Yeah.
good. And what's neat is that you meet all kinds of people, not even the pastors,
Uh,
church members who will write you. I just got an email tonight from a church in Virginia,
uh,
a gentleman I met he likes to write me and speak in Spanish. And, you know, I love getting those kinds of letters. I can remember this guy. I visualize him and we talk in Spanish when I go, and he's praying for me every day, and that's one of the
um,
reasons we can stay here. And so you're gonna love deputation. You have the right kind of personality for that. Now, I'm going to switch gears a big
yeah.
time here as we kind of wind down this and we get to the end here. Obviously, for us, a big thing that happened for those in the United States in the last week, there's a lot of tragedy going on. And, Charlie Kirk was
Mm.
a very popular figure in not only modern politics, but especially in the last couple of years. And I've studied a little more about him recently, how he's been a Christian for a long time, but he's really taken his faith with him all the time on the campuses, but more so even in the last couple of years as I was paying attention. Like he really made a more concerted effort as he would be in these interactions with these college students. And I'm an older guy. Charlie Kirk was much younger than I was, and I still was very much encouraged by his life. But you're kind of that demographic that really young guys who were really impressed and inspired by his life. And I'm wondering what his death has meant to you and your peers. There's
Yeah.
been time of reflection, maybe things that he did that impacted you. We're not trying to make him a saint. He wasn't a perfect man. He wouldn't say
Right.
that. But we
No.
understand. I heard Pastor Chappell say something, I believe it was yesterday, that I thought was really smart and really inspiring. He was saying, what Charlie did, a lot of pastors aren't doing. He would go to places and talk to kids and really was curious about them. And lots of Baptist churches aren't doing that. And that's why I think Pastor Chappell had such an affinity for him, because he's a soul winner and this guy would go out and spread the gospel. So tell us a
Right.
little bit about how you are acquainted with the life of Charlie Kirk and how his passing might have affected you.
Yeah. Um, so I started listening to Charlie Kirk back in 2020 is
Hmm.
when I discovered him and really started listening to a lot of what he had to say, watching the debates
Hmm.
on campuses. Prior to that, I would watch like more creationist versus evolutionist debates that are out there from
Hmm.
all of the campuses. But when I came across Charlie Kirk, it was um, had to do with the Bible many
Hmm.
times
Hmm.
and then politics and stuff. And I loved politics. I loved watching it throughout high school. Um, and so that's when I discovered him. And a friend of mine from college, she headed up the Turning Point USA on Oklahoma State University's campus. And so I actually had the opportunity presented to me through her to go with her and a few others to Turning Point for one of the conferences. Sadly, I did not take the opportunity. It was the middle of the school year. It would have been for a long weekend. Um, and looking back, I wish I would have, given the opportunity, I could have met him, I could have been acquainted to him in some way. Um, and just thank him for how he's impacted my life. Um, Looking back, I wish I would have taken that.
Hmm.
Um, but as many are in college, you're stuck plugging away at your responsibilities.
Yeah.
Um, but I continued listening to him. I continued watching him. How he's impacted me is really along the lines of what Pastor Chappell said.
Hmm.
Um, what has been missing in the pulpits of America is um, pastors talking about the topics where politics does meet the Bible.
Hmm.
See, politicians have become theologians in many ways. They want to tell you, when does life begin? They
Yeah.
want to tell you what is marriage. They want to tell you what a woman is,
Yeah.
what a woman is not, what a man is, what roles are in
Mm.
marriage and a family. It's like they're entering biblical topics. And I don't think pastors should be political in what they say and what they mention in the pulpit, but where politics meets Bible issues, that's where we need to be outspoken and condemn some of the things that are said,
Mhm.
preach out about some of these things that certain politicians have said. And that was something that Charlie was doing, was he was connecting the two where politicians are trying to connect the spiritual with political things, and he was providing answers. He was sharing what the Bible says and among my age group. So I really appreciated that, and um, how I've taken that, how many of my peers have taken that as we have talked about what happened is we want to be the generation that is outspoken about these things. We want to be the preachers that rise up, and we're not afraid to say some of these controversial things. We're not afraid to um, preach controversial messages and things like that, and go against the grains of culture. Um, and finding the balance between that behind the pulpit, I
Mhm.
haven't experienced that,
Yeah.
and I'm no expert. Um, and I also don't say what I just said to shame the preachers that I've been under.
Sure.
I just think generally across the board, it's been a fearful thing, and I get it. Like it would be hard, it'd be scary to preach those things, but I pray that more men in my generation is going to rise up and kind of take the reins and do more of what Charlie did in that regard,
Mm.
but in the pulpits across America and across Australia,
Hmm.
across the world,
Yeah.
is that's how he has impacted me. And in conversations with my peers and graduates of college and students still in college, these are the things I've been hearing in my age group. And I hope that's an encouragement
Yeah.
to your generation as well. I've
Yes.
even seen changes. Like I was listening to just some sermons from yesterday in other pulpits, and then even my pastor was just Pastor Pete was so bold yesterday.
Mm.
Some of the things he talked about, and I thank the Lord for him and his courage in doing that. And I made sure to let him know, like
Hmm.
it's awesome seeing even my pastor's generation is now encouraged and emboldened by it. God is doing something, and I'm really excited.
Yeah,
So,
it's amazing when you think about that impact, especially when you think, that there were other political, not necessarily Christian voices, but political voices who would go into campuses. I mean, I think of, Ben Shapiro was doing that for many years, but he had a totally different kind of attitude when he would go places like that. He was not someone who was particularly trying to be liked or
right.
particularly to be gracious, even. He was just trying to be right. And
Hmm.
that wasn't Charlie. And he also used the gospel.
Hmm.
And I think that's why he had such a good personality. And there's been a lot of testimony of that. But I thought of that, you know, that aspect of it, and it is true to see that boldness. That's one of the reasons we met was because, I hadn't been to leadership conference in like 17 years, but
Yeah.
last event in 2024 with the election coming up, I had sensed just a dearth of courageous men in the pulpits in the states, and wanted to be encouraged by one of the last groups I was seeing that is just, and that was the theme of the leadership conference was courageous, and
Right.
I just wanted to be encouraged to be around a bunch of men who were still going to do right no matter what happened. If the other party kept the power and really continued to change culture, and you
Hmm.
know it was going to change a lot. And that doesn't mean it can't change in 40 years, by the way. I certainly believe that can happen overnight. And so that's why I went on that trip, and I was encouraged by that. And I think, Charlie's death is not to compare it to something like Jim Elliott's, but I think there's a similar thing that can happen in God's economy when He takes someone away at a young age. It can inspire generations to come to follow
Yeah.
the good things of that person, the character, the
Right.
moxie, the courage, and I think sometimes we've lost that, or our country has lost it, and a sense of rebirth of that, and hope that through that someone brought up a good point. When bad things happen, sometimes on the other side there's riots and burning of cities. What you're seeing here are prayer vigils. You're seeing
Yeah.
people
And all over the world.
celebrating life.
Right.
It's not more hate, it's more love. And I think that will have an impact with others too. I think there are people who are noticing that, even people who are not believers.
Waking up.
The believers are reacting differently. They have peace and contentment. We are devastated by the evil in our world, but
Right.
not, we know where Charlie is.
Know the end. Yeah.
We know where he's gone
Yeah.
to. People rallied around his family. So anyway, we don't usually normally talk about contemporary issues, but I thought it would be something that
Yeah.
would affect you. Well, we're going to finish here, and I'm going to have a word of prayer. We just have a few minutes left for Rusty, and we're going to pray for him and his upcoming decisions he's going to be making about his internship here in the future, whether it's sooner or later, and then the next steps in life. And like I said, I hope this is the first of many conversations as we get to
Yeah.
see what God does in your life. And I think one of the reasons Josh and I wanted to do this is that, when you have that internship and Lord willing you have it and you come back, we want to talk to you about it, or maybe while you're there to get some insight, because we want young guys. We know there's a lot of young guys who listen to this podcast, and when we're getting old, they didn't have Facebook and Instagram when we were on deputation. That tells you how old we were, okay?
Right.
We were texting by hitting the same button 3 times. That's how long ago it was, okay?
Yeah.
So a lot's changed, and we understand, and we want the young guys to be able to express new ways of communication in the same Bible spirit. So
And
go ahead.
if I could just add, to any of the young guys that are listening, like, you can find me on social media. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, those types of things, and reach out anytime. Like, I want to get more connected with guys my age or my age bracket. I want to, ask them questions and just learn from them, but also share some insight of things that I've learned. So I'm an open book.
Yeah, a lot of young ladies listen too, so you just never know. All right, you never know. All right. All right.
Yeah.
And now he's getting red. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Rusty and his call, Lord. Thank you for his spirit. Thank you for from a young age not only saving his soul, but giving him a desire to serve you, Lord. And I praise you for putting him in a wonderful church, allowing him to get a wonderful education to prepare his heart for serving you. I'm thankful that he's serving you now, waiting for further direction. But Lord, we're praying about these next steps. It seems, Lord, like he has a clear direction. He just needs that final direction on areas of visa. And Lord, I pray that you would open the door for this internship to happen. You would show him through a year there in Australia exactly what it's like to live there, what it would be like to deal with different burdens and trials and situations, and the joy as well. And Lord, more importantly, direct his steps to some place you'd have him to be starting to preach the gospel. Lord, help him in other areas of his life. Lord, I'm sure he's praying about, Lord, direction, guidance. And Lord, I thank you for his life. I pray that it'd be one we can watch from afar and to see you continue to bless. And I hope that he just continues to have the joy of the Lord. Lord, we ask this always in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Like Rusty said, you can find him on all the main social media. I know he's on Facebook, probably on Instagram. What's your title there on Instagram?
Yeah, so you could search Russell Gibson, Russell, or my username if you want to write it down. It's one word, Lil Russell Lee. So it's spelled LILRUSSELLLEE. So it's kind of confusing, but
Russell Lee.
Search it up. You'll find me that way.
Well, thank you for being our guest, Rusty. I pray that this will be a blessing to young people. And hey, pastors, write this name down. He'll be calling you in the future with a full recommendation of the Missionary Perspective podcast. So, it's your host, Johnson. Thanks for being with us. Like and subscribe to this podcast. Send it to someone. Have a great night.